Welcome to the Elevate Podcast, your resource for all things business, brand, and leadership. We are excited you have decided to join us today.
Hey guys, welcome to the Elevate Podcast. This is our season finale of season 2, episode number 26. I'm Robert Kalin here with...
I'm Mike Newman. Great to be with you, Robert. We miss our usual sidekick, Tony, today, but we'll plow on without the fearful leader. So
yeah. And you know what? That's a great lead in to our topic today, which if you
say
like,
fearless. You
should have said fearless, but you said feared or fearful leader.
Fearful leader,
and
yeah.
If you like horror movies, you're going to love our topic today because we're talking all about fear and really overcoming fear. So this is a topic, it's not often discussed, and I think for all things business, brand, and leadership, at times you can go, wait a second, why are we talking about fear in business, brand, and leadership? But think back to anything that you've wanted to do in life. You've had to overcome fear. You've had to overcome all of the thoughts that have kept you from doing something new. And so that's what we're going to be talking about today, about doing it afraid. And Mike, there's no one I'd rather have this conversation with than you, because you have helped coach me through some of the most fearful times in my own life. And I think you're going to lend a lot of valuable information to all our listeners out there.
Yeah, well, I think when we talk about this topic of fear and facing what some people call the terror barrier, it's about, what we feel. Yeah. Fear is a feeling, there's lots of definitions. We've heard it said that the only thing we have to fear is fear itself, or and then somebody added this piece to it: the only thing we have to fear is fear itself, and maybe the boogeyman. But we have to really, when we talk about fear, we have to discover, I think, what the foundation of our fear is about. And so, what are those terms? FOMO.
Yeah, fear of missing out.
The fear of missing out.
Yep. And
then there was another one, fear of
FOFO,
the fear of finding out. Yeah.
Yep.
I have FOFO every time I, look at my bank account. I have a fear of finding out what it really says. Or some of us, when we were growing up and we, were faced with prom in the springtime of the year, and we had the fear of finding out whether we'd be rejected or accepted. I'm probably bringing up all kinds of bad memories for some people. But fear is not based, upon fact. Okay, it's based upon feelings. Yep. And when we actually get to the foundation, we figure out what the fact is. Another one of these things that I've heard before in the past have been that the definition of fear in an acrostic type of a thing is the false expectations appearing real. Yeah. False expectations appearing real. And so our fear is really to admit that we actually have fear, to overcome it. And so last episode, or maybe a previous episode before that, you were talking about a tough decision that you had to make. Yeah. And being a part of helping you talk through some of those things, I know that fear was a big piece of that decision. Yeah. So in transparency, what were maybe some of the fears that you had about making that decision?
So if you guys haven't heard that episode, it is episode number 24, I believe. So go back and listen to that. You'll hear me at the very end talk about the situation we're talking about right now. But the reality of that situation is there's a number of things that actually caused fear there. Number one, fear of disappointing everybody who had put a lot of effort and time into putting this thing together, that they would feel like it was all for nothing. I think that was my biggest fear in this, was that I was letting people down by making this decision. And then also fear of rejection. Like, what are people going to think of me if I, push forward with this thing and I make a pivot and I go a new direction, and now they're thinking, well, he's unreliable, he's untrustworthy, he's, all of those things. And so those were a couple of the big fears that I had with that specific decision, where, you were helping me process through, well, is that real? Well, are they really going to think those things, or are they going to recognize that you have their best interest in mind, that you are, considering all of it? And so, yeah.
Yeah. And so as you're listening to what Robert had to say, I think that it's really important that as we had that conversation a little bit behind the curtain look at it was when I asked him some questions about it, the fear of disappointment came out, as he just said, as the biggest thing that he was afraid of. I don't want to disappoint other people. And so we talked through that and looked at what the reality of it was. Because so oftentimes, I think, Robert, we do this where we tell ourselves a story that's not true.
Yeah.
And we assume, and I don't know what happens to it. I'm not a psychologist to tell you what happens, but I know it's happened to me in the past of different fears that have come up, whether it's, I'm going to go buy a new vehicle.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I'm fearful of sitting down and negotiating with them over it, even though that's a common practice. We never go into McDonald's and try and negotiate a different price on their meal. But when we go to a car dealer, we always want to do that. And that's an accepted practice that we have. But truthfully, I have a fear about doing that. I don't know where that fear comes from. I've never analyzed it. Maybe by the time we get through today, maybe I'll have my own session here of looking at it. But there are things that, when we don't have confidence, it creates fear.
Yeah.
I've shared with you guys before, I've got 2 little grandsons, and one of them is fearless. I mean, he's literally fearless. We were at the not the ocean, but the Puget Sound has a big beach like an ocean. It's salt water. For those of you that aren't familiar with where the Puget Sound is, but it's like being at the ocean. There's big waves. And this little guy, he just is walking out there, and we tell him, no, don't go out there. No, I want to go out here, and he keeps going. We have to grab him before, the wave sweeps over the top of him. And so he's fearless because he doesn't know better.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, when we take fear and we look at how do we overcome it, it's about finding out what the foundation of that fear is. And so I think that Robert, as we're talking about this in this episode, being number 26.
Yeah.
We started this a half year, where we at? We'll date
6
ourselves.
months.
We're June. So we started out the 1st of 2023, I think it was, in January of 2023.
Yep.
And we said
16th.
we wanted to do this podcast. The exact dates. We wanted to do these podcasts to help people in their business, brand, and leadership. We didn't know all the topics we were going to talk about. And I remember saying at the time, we don't have to have it all laid out, even though my personality and my working style would be, I want all the details. But we've just had a great time in talking about leadership, talking about business, spending a little bit of time around brand and having some guests and those things on. But when we looked at it, there was a fear that was, what if we're not good?
Yeah.
And
what if no one listens? What? Yeah.
Yeah. So what if nobody listens?
Yeah.
At least we're trying. And then I read some stuff from some people that are really big in the podcast world, and they said the first year was horrible. That's just the way you can expect it. Well, I would say our first year has been pretty good.
Yeah.
And we've got a great team, and we're doing things the right way. And so it's really about, when we overcome the fear is to focus on today, not yesterday, not about what happened before, not about that bad experience before that you're carrying with you, not about the boogeyman of tomorrow, but focus on today.
Yeah.
So as you have talked about the pivot that you've made with the Elevate conference, okay, and we're moving in a slightly different direction from going to 2 days to 1 day. And you've talked a bit about that in that previous episode that we were sharing. But as you look down the road in the future, with the other businesses that you have, and some of us are only good enough to run one business. Robert's good enough to run two or three.
No, not at all. Supported.
But what are the fears that commonly come up for you as a business owner?
Yeah, that's a great question. I would say one of the most common fears that come up for me as a business owner, unknowns of like what's going on with the economy. What happens if the rug gets pulled out? What happens if another pandemic happens? Right? How do I prepare for those things, or be as prepared as I can possibly be for those things? And the reality is, a lot of times you can't, because they're unknowns. They may not happen. But I want to bring up something that you had said, Mike, with your grandson, which was, you had to run out there and pick him up because he didn't know. He's never experienced a wave crush him before. And a lot of the people that are listening to this right now have experienced a crushing wave in their life. They've written a program in their head that says, well, if I do this, if I step out in fear, bad things could happen. And so I want to stay away from that. But what happens is that pushes us into our comfort zone, and it keeps us there. And we stop innovating, we stop getting creative, we stop taking risks. And I don't say risk in terms of uncalculated risk, but we stop taking risks in general. And that keeps us from experiencing what's on the other side of fear. What if it does work out?
Right. So you bring up a great point, and this is a quote, I don't know where it came from, but it says, both faith and fear may sail into your harbor, but only let faith take an anchor.
Yeah.
And so it goes along with the fact that feeling the fear and doing it anyway really reprograms our attitude about fear.
Yeah.
Because fear is often means don't.
Yeah.
Don't, and we've been taught that. Don't touch the hot stove. Don't run into the water.
Yeah.
That's the fear of don't. But what would happen if fear meant all systems go? All systems go. So we've all gone through the pandemic. You have a business that survived all of the things it could. In fact, you started another business during that time frame to help other businesses thrive with the Puyallup night market.
Yeah.
So how did you overcome that fear?
Well, I guess that fear wasn't really a fear. Okay. Setting out to do the night market was setting out to make a difference, because I recognized that it was just a hard situation for so many people that I know. And I guess I just, maybe there was fear in, I don't even know. That's a great thought. I feel like the fears came out later.
when you knew some of the things.
Yeah.
And so I think that one of the things that I was hoping that you would say is that you did it anyway.
Yeah.
And then you discovered things along the way. And sometimes we let fear just keep us from doing something.
Sure.
Okay. And I think that oftentimes when we're in that state of fear, that we have choices to make. Do I feed the fear, the wrong emotion, or do I feed all systems go? Let's tackle this thing. Let's move on. Yeah. Do I, have that reaction of, the risk might be too great? I know that's one of them that I have a fear of. Can I spend that much money investing in this to make this happen? And so part of overcoming the fear as well is about doing some research around it, but not so much research that it paralyzes you. Don't analyze it to the point of paralysis, but analyze, is it worth the risk? And maybe a different way to look at it is asking yourself maybe these three questions. What's the worst that can happen? what's the best that can happen, and then what most likely will happen.
Yeah.
I think when we tackle it with those simple 3 questions and we coach ourselves through that when we're facing fear, go back to my thing where I said I'm doing my own analysis. What's the worst that can happen when I go to the car dealership? I pay the sticker price. Okay. That's the worst that can happen to me. Right. And I buy the extended warranty and I decide to do the other upgrade that they have for me at that time. And it costs me more than what I anticipated. Okay. What's the best thing that can happen? Well, I save a bunch of money. I get $5,000 under the sticker price. I feel good about the deal that I had. That's the best that can happen. What's most likely to happen to me is I'm going to pay somewhere in between what the sticker price is and what I think it's worth. And I'll probably buy the extended warranty and I'll have a bigger payment than what I thought I was going to have. Yeah. Now that I've analyzed it all, I went through what's the worst, what's the best, and then what's most likely. Yeah. And I almost, I don't have to wrestle with it that much. Not that I'm buying a new car, but.
That's good. I know we only have a couple minutes left, and I want to bring up another aspect of fear, though, for this last couple of minutes, which is, oftentimes we can fear the unknown in having a difficult conversation. We can fear the unknown in business moves and deals and acquisitions and, various things that go on in our lives of contracts. And maybe it's something we don't know and we need to get someone else involved. Going back to, as I was thinking about the night market, and the reason that whole thing started, and maybe why I didn't have a ton of fear initially, was because I wasn't operating from a place of self. Fear often comes because we're thinking about me, right? How am I going to deal with this difficult conversation? But when we shift it around and we say, well, what's best for the person I'm going to go talk to, the person that's going to be on the other side, what's really best for them? And you operate from that position of love, for that person. It shifts the conversation a little bit. So Mike, can you share any thoughts that you have in regards to those thoughts there?
I think, when you talk about the difficult conversation, is one where I've had many, many difficult conversations throughout my career with employees and difficult conversations with family members and those types of things. But you're exactly right when you say it is all about what your intent is. If my motive is to help that person through a difficult time in their life or difficult time in their work, that's a lot different than I don't want them to hurt me in that process, or I'm afraid about getting hurt in that process. So having a difficult conversation oftentimes is simply about, sharing perspectives and going in with positive intent. So I could say something like, Robert, I know you didn't intend to make me feel this way, but here's how I felt. Boom, 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 whatever that happens to be. But I know that wasn't your intent. So tell me about how we can make this work better next time. Yeah. And that is a way of addressing your fear of being rejected, in my case, if I was having a difficult conversation with you. But it also is one where now we're looking for solutions, not looking for blame.
And here's what I'm going to say, because we need to wrap this up. There's always the thing called the terror barrier, the fear that keeps you from doing the thing that you should do, the difficult conversation, the risk, whatever it is. There's that terror barrier. On the other side, or I guess through the terror barrier, through the fear, the other side of that has opportunities that you couldn't fathom.
Right. Yeah.
Has opportunities that you didn't realize. Oh, a deeper relationship with that employee, because you know what? They understood what I was trying to say. And I came at it from a place of, hey, they matter. I care about them. I want the best for them. That business deal or buying that car or whatever it is, on the other side of it is an outcome that you can't fathom right now. push through the terror barrier, push through the fear.
Push through with courage to do the next right thing. And as we close this today, what I want to say about this whole thing of fear is fear can either stop you or it can propel you to the next thing. And so whether you're fearful about taking the next step, you're fearful about a conversation you need to have, do it anyway.
Yeah.
Do it
Absolutely.
anyway. And with good intent, thinking the best of the next person or that person, and it will work out.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I love that. You guys, whatever you've got going on in your business, do it afraid. I'm excited to see what happens with you on the other side of fear, crossing through that terror barrier, and the blessing and the abundance and all of that that's going to happen for you. I am so thankful, Mike, that we got to have this conversation on the podcast, the season finale, talking about fear. The next episode, season 3, we're going to talk about the right environment. Okay. And I cannot wait to have you guys there as we discuss this. I'm looking forward to it. And Mike, you want to lead us out?
Yeah, well, thank you so much for being here today. And we look forward to seeing you on season 3.